Hey everyone, and welcome to our instructional video on the new CDF or the Custom Drag Factor tool. CDF was introduced in Upgrade 3.2, however, it's been in the Applied Ballistics engine for a little while now. What that means is that you can go ahead and start using the CDF calibration tool in AB Quantum and sending those profiles over to your devices. And those devices will be able to accept those profiles and they will not lose that CDF data. However, if those companies haven't implemented the CDF tool at this time, or the time that you're reviewing this, then that data is there in the profile because it's in the Applied Ballistics core. It's just not going to be in the calculation until that company decides to implement it in their device. With that being said, it is safe to send the profiles to the devices. That data will not be lost, and it will become effective once it's implemented inside of it. So you may not see that calibration at first, but once they turn it on and they upgrade their firmware or whatever they need to do to implement it, then you will see that calibration correction happen. With that being said, let's go ahead and move forward into the custom drag factor information here. So a custom drag factor you can think of like a BC or a personal drag model or a custom drag model calibration on steroids. You can use this to perform a BC calibration or a CDM or PDM calibration. A CDF calibration will affect the entire predictive model, the entire flight model, so that's an important thing to note. Whereas a muzzle velocity calibration will change your muzzle velocity, and a DSF or drop scale factor calibration will change the calibration in the subsonic or at long range. The CDF calibration, as you can see here, can be performed at any range greater than 0, will affect the entire flight model. So because of that, there's a checklist of 4 things that you really need to do before doing a CDF calibration. Number 1. Your muzzle velocity should be from a radar chronograph, or you should perform a muzzle velocity calibration. That's number 1. Number 2, make sure you've performed a tall target test, a sight scale factor test, a scope calibration, whatever you want to call it. Make sure you performed that scope tracking test before you do a CDF calibration. If you've performed that scope tracking test, make sure that that information is in the profile. Number 3, the third thing you should do is to clear the DSF table unless you haven't performed a scope tracking test and you don't have the tools to do it. You can use DSF to calibrate your scope if need be before performing the CDF calibration. So go ahead and do that before doing a CDF calibration. But all other DSF factors should be removed. DSF does affect the CDF and the CDF does affect the DSF. So if you currently have information in that DSF portion and you perform a CDF, it's going to affect that. Positively or negatively, it's going to affect it. And the last thing is to make sure that all of the target data is up to date, true, and correct. And we're going to demonstrate this and go through all 4 of those items here in the app. But before we do that, I want y'all to understand where some things are and what their neutral position is. So you can see here our current CDF is 1.0. 1.0 is a neutral position for a CDF. So if we didn't want a custom drag factor calibration in place, that should read 1.0. I'm going to go ahead and open up the DSF table. You can see 1.0 across the board because that's a neutral position for the DSF table. And then I'm going to go into the profile here and show y'all, here's custom drag factors found under the bullet data 1.0, so it's currently not in use. And I'm going to scroll down here to advanced settings in the scope, and you can see sight scale factor, elevation, and windage. That's your scope tracking information. Perform a tall target test to get those numbers. Are both 1.0, which means that they're not currently in use. And we'll keep going down and you can see your DSF table here as well. So if you ever wanted any of those calibrations to not be in use, just to make sure they're set to 1.0. For this one, you can actually just hit the clear button. And now it's cleared out and it's not in use. So we've gone through where those things are in the app, but let's next go into how to use them. So before we do a CDF calibration, remember our checklist, number 1, our muzzle velocity. In this case, we're using a radar chronograph, so we've got good muzzle velocity, but if we didn't have a radar chronograph, we would do an MV calibration. You can find that here. These are your controllers. The ballistic calibration controller, you have your calibration type and MV calibration. So we would perform this if we didn't have that other data. Item number 2, we've performed a scope tracking test and our scope is good. We're at 1.0, that's where we should be. So that data is correct. Item number 3, we want to clear this DSF table unless we're using it for our scope tracking. We're not, so let's clear it. That's done. And then item number 4, and this is critically important because garbage in is garbage out. We're going to go ahead and update all of our target information. This does matter, so you need to do it first. And it really is best to do a CDF calibration live fire on the range. That's the best case scenario for doing it. So let's go ahead and we'll open up the target menu. You can see we have no data here. That's not good. So let's go ahead and update these. There we are. That data is now updated and correct. The next thing is the environment data. This is also critically important. So let's go ahead and update this. 76 degrees on February 5th. All right, the wind is from the south and currently it's 12 miles an hour. So let's go ahead and put that in. And again, this does matter. Gusting to, yes, it's gusting to 25. So we'll go ahead and input that information. All right, all of our target and environment information is now correct. So we can go ahead and go back. We're going to open our controllers here and we're going to go to ballistic calibration. We're going to select the calibration type CDF. And you can now see that we can do this at any range greater than the 0 range. You really should do this further out. The further out you do this, the more accurate it's going to be. You don't have to, but that's the best case scenario. So let's say that we were shooting 600 yards and our elevation should be 15.6 MOA, but our elevation was actually 15.2. Now this entry here, this is our, and you can adjust the range. If you're working in meters, you can adjust that in settings. This information here, this drop information, is the true drop, not the corrected drop. So if we were supposed to shoot 15.6 MOA, but we found that we were actually hitting 0.2 MOA low, we're not going to input 0.2 MOA. We're going to input the actual solution here. So we want to take a 5 to 10 shot group at that distance, and we want to accurately measure what the true drop was. In this case, we'll use 15.2, and you can see our calculated CDF here is 0.963. Now, if we're happy with that, we'll go ahead and apply it. You can see our firing solution here is adjusted to correlate to it. And if we look in our profile, we'll see here now our custom drag factor is 0.963. So that's how you use the custom drag factor. Now, the cool thing about this tool is you can constantly use this. You can continuously update this. So let's say it's a new day and I go to the range, and today we're shooting at 800 yards. There we are. And we're supposed to be shooting at 26.76. Now, do note that this firing solution is calibrated at this point. This is not an uncalibrated solution. But now I'm finding out that I need to hold 27 even. For whatever reason, I need 27 MOA today. So we've updated it, and you can see here that our updated CDF is 0.972. Our old one was 0.963. If I'm happy with this, I can hit the apply button, and now our current has updated to the 0.972. 0.972. So you can continuously use this while you're shooting and update this information each time you go to the range to continually refine your firing solution. And it's a really good tool for that continuous update. And you're updating more when you do this than just the drop of the bullet, because you're taking into account twist rate of your rifle, the errors on your laser rangefinder. Maybe this is actually 812 yards, but my rangefinder says 800 yards. Well, we're calibrating all of these things out of the system, and you're calibrating your scope in this instance and other things. So this is a really good tool to use on a continuous basis. Now, if you wanted to eliminate your custom drag factor, or you wanted to reset that back, let's go ahead and go in here. Let's say I didn't want that anymore. I want to reset it back to normal. You can go in here, you can set this to 1. We'll back out and we'll save those changes. And you can see now our current CDF is 1.0, and the firing solution has reset back to a standard number. It's not calibrated anymore. And that's how you actually remove that from the firing solution. You can do that on any profile. If I go down here to the profiles and I open another one, you can see it's right here. I could set that to 1.0, and then that has been reset back out to a neutral position, so to speak. So that's the custom drag factor. That's how to use it. It's found when you open this up under ballistic calibration. It's important to note that CDF will only appear for elite and pro users. This will not be found under, if you're on an ultralight user, you won't see this tool, but it's there for you. If you want to use it, you can use it at any range greater than the 0 range. And you can use it continuously each time you go to the range to constantly refine your firing solution. Hopefully this video was helpful. If you have any questions or comments for us, or any ideas for other videos you'd like to see, please put them in the comments below. You can also send us a support ticket or an email by clicking the navigation button and clicking this support button here. And by doing that, we'll get those questions and try to get those answered as best we can. Hopefully this was helpful, and I hope you have a good day. Thank you.